All right, guys. Hey, hi, welcome back. So today we are going to be doing a reading on Justinian and Theodora. Our notes don't do as much justice to them as I would like, so it's better for us to do in this extra reading. Now, on this extra reading, our first thing is actually a set of vocabulary words that you're going to see throughout this reading. So, the word sustain means to continue. If it sustains, it continues on. If it's contradictory, it means it's opposite, means that it's going directly against something else. If you are commissioned, you are appointed to do something. Right? If I get commissioned to draw a piece of artwork, that means someone has appointed me to draw that artwork, usually for some money. If it is systematic, it is orderly. If you see the term political factions, those are groups with opposing opinions. Think Democrats, Republicans, Independents. If it's just, it's morally right and proper. It's what you should do. If you see the word prosperity, that means success. If it's substantial, that means it's of considerable importance. It's pretty important. A confrontation, well, you've got a not so great face-to-face meeting. Confrontations, they're not great things. If you're going to flee, you're going to run away. If you have a shroud, that's a cloth that is put over a body. An advocate is a supporter or a defender of something. And feminism means supporting equal rights for women. All right. Oh, look, we already have stuff highlighted. Pretty important. Let's go on ahead and read. Justinian and Theodora I. In the middle of the 6th century, Emperor Justinian and his wife, Empress Theodora, ruled the Byzantine Empire for close to 40 years. They are one of the most famous couples in all of history. When Justinian became emperor, he spent 30 years trying to restore the old Roman Empire, and he nearly did it. His efforts, however, put such a financial burden on the empire, in the form of higher taxes, that he could not sustain his conquests, and most of them were again lost. Remember, if we see this word out here that's underlined and we don't know what it means, we can go back up to our vocabulary. Oh, look, sustain means to continue. So he could not sustain or continue his conquests. So that's what happened to the land he got in the Western Roman Empire. He had it, but he couldn't keep it. But what Justinian is most known for is Justinian's Code. Justinian knew that old Roman law, starting with the 12 tables, was founded on the correct principles of the rule of law, as well as equal rights under the law. However, he also saw that laws themselves had become too numerous, confusing, and often contradictory. So, there were too many laws, they didn't make sense, and they would fight against each other. If there's too many laws, they don't make sense, and they fight against each other, is that going to be easy to follow? No, it's not. Now, Justinian's code, to oversee his new empire, Justinian ordered legal experts to consolidate or bring together and merge together old Roman law into a single law code. The Justinian Code served as the legal basis for criminal justice, marriage, property, slavery, and women's rights. Yes, slavery existed even back in Rome. It's not great, but it is what it is. Can't change history. The law code became one of the most important legacies of the Byzantine Empire and served as the basis for laws for the next 900 years. That's a big deal if it's serving for 900 years. So in 529, he commissioned that group of lawyers to organize these laws into a unified, systematic body of law. And it was, by today's standards, harsh, yet it did protect some individual rights and brought some reform to the Roman legal system. The code preserved Roman law and later served as the foundation for the legal systems of many modern nations. In 532, Justinian forcibly put down the Nika Revolt, a violent revolt caused by some of the political factions, different groups, in Constantinople who were angered by high taxes and changes in the legal system. So they didn't like what he was doing. And although they were Christians, many of them held different religious views than Justinian, specifically about the nature of Jesus. So the Nika Revolt caused such widespread destruction in the capital of Constantinople that more than 25 churches had to be rebuilt, along with numerous other public buildings, aqueducts, and bridges. That's a lot of destruction. One of the churches that had to be rebuilt as a consequence of the destruction was the massive Hagia Sophia, which was considered to be one of the most beautiful churches in the world. Now, if you're thinking to yourself, hey, wait a minute, this article has highlighted Theodora, and so far it's been almost all about Justinian, you'd be right. But there's a reason for this. Up until recently, this is probably all that's been understood about early history books. They didn't bring much about Theodora to the table. But the reality is really different. So let's look at Justinian's code, for example. It has provisions or sections in it that deal with the granting of more rights to women and children. This did not happen by chance. Emperor Justinian considered Theodora his intellectual equal, and with good cause. It means she was just as smart as him. She was able to convince him that expanded rights for women and children was not only just or morally right, but it was necessary for the prosperity or growth of the empire. Theodora also served as a protector for many leaders of religious minorities within Orthodox Christianity. So she kept those that didn't share the same beliefs safe. Her involvement in the advancement of rights of minorities and the powerless was substantial and a direct result of her intellect and her persuasiveness. She was a very good speaker. She was very good at convincing people to do what she wanted. History records the way that Justinian crushed the Nika revolt. It makes mention of the 30,000 rioters that were killed in the confrontations and the absolute power that Justinian gained as a result of the way he forcibly handled the revolt. What was until lately seldom mentioned, or barely ever mentioned, was the fact that as the rioters surrounded the emperor's palace, Justinian and his court were preparing to flee the city. They were going to run away. It was Theodora who convinced him to stay and fight. If it wasn't for her, he'd have been killed. The historian Procopius, who we've talked about in Dragon Time this week, we've read a few more of his things. Now, the emperor and his court were deliberating or debating as to whether it would be better for them if they remained or if they ran away. They took flight on the ships. And many opinions were expressed favoring either course. And the Empress Theodora spoke to the following effect. My opinion, then, is that the present time, above all others, is inopportune for flight, even though it brings safety. For while it is impossible for a man who has seen the light not also to die, for one who has been an emperor, it is unendurable to be a fugitive. If, now, it is your wish to save yourself, O emperor, there is no difficulty. For we have much money, and there is the sea, here the boats. However, consider whether it will not come about, after you have been saved, that you would gladly exchange that safety for death. As for myself, I approve a certain ancient saying that royalty, purple, is a good burial shroud. May I never be separated from this purple. Never will I see the day where I am not saluted as empress. She's saying she'd rather die than run away. She's in purple, which is the color of royalty. She's going to die in purple. She's not leaving. She is not going to quit being empress. When the empress had spoken thus, all were filled with boldness, turning their thoughts to resistance. They began to consider how they might be able to defend themselves if any hostile forces should come against them. She's a pretty good public speaker. I didn't do her justice. She's really good at this. She was able to convince a whole group of royalty, basically, to stand and fight instead of running away to save their skins. It's a big deal. Following the Nika revolt, Justinian and Theodora rebuilt and reformed Constantinople and made it the most splendid and modern city the world has seen for centuries. Theodora is considered by historians as a significant figure of high intellect, a courageous reformer, an advocate for minorities, and a pioneer of feminism. She died of cancer in 548 AD at the age of 48. Justinian wept bitterly at her funeral. He was the Byzantine Empire's first great emperor. However, much of his success must go to his wife and partner, Empress Theodora. Behind every good man is a great woman. All right, now we have a few questions to go along with this. We are going to drag the purple smiley faces next to the letter of the correct answer. See, we got a smiley face. See, I can drag it. I can drag it. You just click it and drag it. All right. So Justinian's code included provisions in it that deal with the granting of more rights to women and children because, do you think it's A, Theodora was able to convince Justinian that expanded rights for women and children were not only morally right, but necessary for the success of the empire? Do you think it's B, the Nika political faction insisted that those provisions be included in the law code? Or do you think it was C, the prime minister, Procopius, urged Justinian to include these provision to secure the votes for women and children? So just drag your smiley face to whichever one you think it is. Hi, we'll talk about that later. And by we'll talk, I mean I'll talk to myself. As an advocate for minorities and a pioneer of feminism, Theodora A, convinced Justinian that women and children deserve the rights in a moral society. B, served as a protector for many leaders of religious minorities within Orthodox Christianity. Or C, both of the above. Again, drag your smiley face into the box for the correct answer. And then number 3, who was responsible for convincing Emperor Justinian to stay and put down the Nika revolt? Was it A, Procopius, B, Hagia Sophia, or C, Theodora? Again, smiley face, drag it where you think it needs to go. Right. Now there are 3 videos here to watch. Now this one, Theodora's speech in the Nika riot, well, you may have already watched that video. If you haven't, please do, because it's pretty good. We have another video for Justinian's code, very short. And another video about Justinian, again, very short. Okay. Now, when you are done with that, talk to Miss Martha. She'll have something for you. All right, guys. Have a great rest of your day.